Good day, everyone. First, I'd briefly like to introduce myself. My name is Hector Martinez. I'm your Channel Sales and Educational Manager for DxO Labs, coming at you live from Boulogne, Paris. At DxO, we create image processing software for all demanding and serious photographers. And today we'll be talking about how to create black and white images in DxO Film Pack 4 and how to give them your own unique look. Today we're actually going to be discussing the following: fine-tuning the film grain in DxO Film Pack 4, working with our channel mixer in order to create our own unique black and white looks, working with our black and white filters, applying special effects such as toning, textures, light leaks, and frames, which is all new to DxO Film Pack 4, and most importantly, the difference between Film Pack Essentials and the Expert Edition. So that being said, today I just so happen to be using DxO Film Pack 4 as a standalone application, but it also is an application that you can utilize as a plugin. So let's begin. What I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to launch DxO Film Pack 4, and for those users who are using DxO Film Pack 3, you can clearly see that we've done some overhauling on the icon itself. So we're just going to open up the interface, and we're going to begin. There's actually two separate ways that you can bring an image into DxO Film Pack 4. You can simply just click on the image display window, and a little dialog box will open up, tapping into your main directory, allowing you to import an image directly into Film Pack 4. Or you can actually go to your left-hand side on the open folder, and once again, you tap into your main directory where you can import an image. So we're going to bring our first image, and I'm actually going to work off of this one right here. So let's select that image. We're going to open it right up and bring it right into Film Pack. That being said, we're actually going to start taking a tour of individual black and white looks. From there, we're going to manipulate the film grain to our own liking. But before we do so, I'd like to bring to everyone's attention today that we're not mimicking, nor are we simulating. We're actually emulating the true traditional analog film. Unlike any other black and white filter on the market, we're actually capable of tapping into 256 shades of black, white, and gray, giving us end users the availability of exploring the full look of that individual film that we choose. Not only that, we're also bringing back the emotion and the creativity of that individual film to life to be able to apply it to our digital images. So the very first thing that we're going to do in order to create a black and white look, and there's two ways you can go about it. You can actually go up to your control panels and you can select black and white, which is going to start you off kind of on like a monochrome fix. But what you really want to do is you actually want to go down to your lower toolbar and select your black and white films. What I'm going to do now is, which is really important, is I really want to showcase the actual film grain that we're emulating here in our laboratories. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up on top, our upper toolbar, and I'm going to utilize the magnification tool, and I'm probably going to zoom in, let's say around 40%. So let's just go up here and just type in 40. So 40%. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take my navigation tool, and I'm actually going to try to find a nice sweet spot, which is right on the face. I'm going to close that up. And we're just going to take a quick little tour of the individual emulated looks that we have to offer. And after that, I'm actually going to show you how to manipulate your film grain. So let's just take a little quick tour of each individual film look that we have to offer. And if you could keep your main focus attention of all the individual films that we have to offer, I'm actually just going to start scrolling through each individual film one by one. Okay, there goes our Delta 100. There goes our Delta 3200, Delta 400. We have our Ilford HPS 800, our Ilford XP2, your Kodak high-speed infrared, your Kodak HIE high-speed infrared, your T-Max 100, one of my all-time favorites, T-Max 3200, your T-Max 400, your Tri-X 400, Polaroid 667, you got your Rollies. So now let's get into that individual film look, and I want to show you how you can actually manipulate that individual film grain. So let's choose a certain film type of our personal preference. And I'm actually going to go with one of my all-time favorites, that T-Max 3200. I actually remember being in school and shooting pro packs of this stuff. So let's showcase this. So here, if you could keep your main focus attention along the cheeks and the face, you can actually see the traditional film grain. But what I want to showcase right now is the film grain feature, which can be located on your right-hand side under the controls panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop down the menu, and if you could be so kind just to keep your main focus attention along the face, as I start moving this intensity slider over to the right-hand side, you can clearly see that I'm amplifying the film grain. So let's gradually just move that over to the right-hand side, and in real-time processing, you're actually going to see this film grain be amplified, giving us a nice strong effect. But let's just say if we just wanted to reap the benefits of the 3 renders of this individual film, and we just wanted to reap the benefits of the color, the contrast, and the saturation of that individual film, and just get rid of that film grain, we can actually grab this intensity slide and just gradually move it over to the left-hand side. And then from there, you can clearly see that all that nice film grain has gone away. And I'm actually just going to do that one more time. So we're going to grab this intensity slider, gradually move it over to the right-hand side. And you can see now all that traditional analog film grain has come back. And once again, we're just going to move it to the left-hand side and get rid of it. There it is, gone. For our next demonstration, we're actually going to be talking about some of the black and white filters, how they work, and where they can be located. So let's just close out this film grain window, and we're actually just going to go up to our left-hand side and open a folder. We're not going to save this image because we were just using this for demonstration purposes, but we're actually going to bring in another image. So let's choose this one. Let's open it up. Let's bring back our lower toolbar where we have all our presetted emulated traditional analog films, and let's look for a film that will be really suitable to showcase those filters that we have to offer. I'm actually going to go with this Tri-X, this Kodak Tri-X 400. So let's select that. What I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to cascade the lower palette so we can have a nice big image in our image display window. And now we're actually just going to get into our filters, which can actually be located under your controls on your right-hand side. So let's just open that up. And the purpose of using our filters, with the exception of color correction filters, back in the day, black and white photographers pretty much exclusively used color filters. However, we also share some other filters in common with color photographers. These filters might be used to reduce haze, reflections off of metallic surfaces, or even glare. A certain number of filters and color filters are available in Film Pack 4, allowing us to exercise some selective control over our tonality values. They can be an extremely important tool in helping us with our creative vision, whether we're using film or digital cameras. At times, the use of filters are almost mandatory by the limitations of the subject matter that we're shooting. So I guess the perfect example that I can give everyone today is back when I shot film in school, I quickly learned that film was extremely sensitive to the blues and extremely sensitive to light. So resulting in pretty much what we know to be blown out highlights in the skies and even the clouds. In this case, we would use a filter to compensate for the difference. Another problem in using white balance tools while shooting black and white is that the exception of the blue that I had mentioned earlier. The problem with that is that I had mentioned earlier is that similar reflectance may have similar tone values in your resulting, let's just say, prints, or even when showcasing your work in monitors. So if there's one huge tip that I can give everyone today, if you're really trying to reap the benefits of Film Pack 4, you definitely want to make sure that you're running a really tight color managed system. And for those who are not familiar with color management, at the end of this webinar, we're actually going to take 10 minutes to just answer some general, Q&As, and I'll be more than happy to recommend some really, really good color management solutions so that we can actually see what we're doing accurately. So that being said, in this case, I would, for that being said, for example, if we're photographing an apple tree per se and found that the green foliage and the red apples have similar reflected light meter readings, they might also be indistinguishable because the tonality values in the black and whites. So in this case, I would choose a red filter to lighten the apples, and I would use a darker filter for the foliage, or use a green filter to darken the apples and lighten the foliage. So it's really important at times like this to use your black and white filters. So available in the filter menu, in the drop-down menu of Film Pack 4, you can actually increase or lower the effects of the filters by using the intensity slider that automatically appears once you've selected one of these black and white filters. So that being said, I actually want to get into the filters because I remember being in school and, Classic 101 black and white photography, receiving like a 25 pack of black and white filters, and at that time I thought it was like really frustrating figuring out what filter was really good to use at what time. So I actually just want to start going over each individual filters that we have to offer. So I'm going to start off with our cool tone filter. And the cool tone filter actually helps to reduce the proportion of warm tones or incoming light that's increasing the proportion of the cool tones. We have a blue filter, which gives you that foggy and unreal atmosphere to like landscapes if you're into shooting landscapes. We have our green filter, which lightens the foliage. So trees can appear like really dark in many black and white photos. And then our all-time classic filter, which pretty much everyone should be familiar with, was our yellow filter, which is extremely, a classic filter that pretty much everyone carried. The yellow filter slightly increased the textures of skies and bringing out clouds. We also have our orange filter, which strongly darkens the skies and increases the differentiation between many objects, similar to, I would say, similar to using like intensity filters per se. For example, the orange filter would be a really good filter for bringing out flowers and foliage. The stronger the orange, the more stronger the effect will appear on the image. We have our dark orange. Our dark orange enhances the effects obtained with the orange filter. So it's kind of like that in-between fix. And then we have your red filter, which was extremely powerful filter to use that provide really strong dramatic effects for darkening skies and giving your image that overall extreme contrast that you're looking for. And then we have our warm tone filter, which reproduces the proportions of cool tones and increases your warm tones. And now I'm actually going to start getting into some of my favorite filters, and this is just, as a photographer, these are some of the filters that individually stood out to me in Film Pack 4. And these are filters that you can only, I can't stress this enough, these are filters that you can only find utilizing Film Pack 4 Expert Edition. The Essential Edition does not offer these filters. So we're actually going to start getting into the filters, and we're going to talk about the bright cyan filter. This filter greatly increases the density of reds, yellows, and orange elements in an image, and it also brightens the blue elements as well. You have your bright orange. Your bright orange filter brightens the image overall and pretty much gives a little bit more contrast of the warm tones. Then we have our brown filter. Our brown filter acts like an orange filter, but it's actually more subtle by retaining more density to the image. And then we have our cyan, which is pretty much the balance. And pretty much what we're doing with the cyan, it's actually giving you more of cooler tones used in like landscape photos, or it even actually warms up the tones of a sunset, for example, by shifting them towards the blue and the green tones per se. And then we have our light orange filter, which affects the overall brightness of the image, but it's less marked. It's a less marked way of brightening the image. And then we have our magenta. Our magenta could also be used both in color positive and color negative films, but the filter also brings out clouds in the skies, brightens up the reds, and absorbs the green. So just a quick tip for our end users, as far as your filter goes, your magenta filter, you could also apply this towards your color slide film and your color negative film as well. So that's just a little tip there for today. And then we have our move, which is more like a violet color. This filter strongly reduces the overall contrast of the image, which is extremely noticeable among the warm tones. And it also gives you some cool tones, such as in the blues and things of that nature. Then we have our pink filter. The pink filter pretty much creates a denser image than the brown and orange filter, but with the more flatter overall contrast of the image. And then you have your purplish blue filter, which gives you a great deal of density to like the yellows, the reds, and it really gives you like, it actually reduces the density of the pinks and the purples, while ironically brightening up the blues. And then you have your density slider, which will help you amplify the filter by moving it over to the right-hand side, or let's just say if you're trying to find like that in-between, you can actually grab this density slider and move it to your far left-hand side, which gives you a more subtle look. And I'll do that one more time. And this could be applied to like all the filters. I just so happen to be showcasing this just for this individual purple filter. So there goes that. And let's lighten it up. But for me, personal preference, I think it really looks nice when you take the density slider and just move it all the way to the right-hand side. There you go. Now we're actually going to start discussing, our tonings, our textures, our light leaks, and our frames. So let's start. And keep in mind, these are all new functionalities that you can only find in Film Pack 4. So let's bring in another image. And I don't want to save that because we're just using this for demonstration purposes. And where can we find one? Let's go right here. Let's open up this image. Let's close that out. And let's start working off the toning for a second. So in conventional photo prints, that pretty much go back hundreds of years ago, the image was actually formed from silver crystals. The more larger the crystals, the darker the image would actually appear. Toning is actually a really old process that consists of replacing the silver crystals with various different types of metal salt or silver-free colorants per se. The goal is to get a more suitable mid-tone with denser shadows and also achieving a print that was more archivable in the long run. So let's just go over some of the different tonings that we have to offer. And as far as the toning choices that you can choose from the drop-down menu of Film Pack 4, the following tonings that could be blended with the original photo by using the intensity slider as well. And the intensity slider appears once you've selected a toning filter. So let's get into the ferric sulfate for a second. And the ferric sulfate produces that more gray-greenish tint, as you can see right now. And if you're running off of a tight color management system at home, you can clearly see that, you know, the image intends to appear a bit greenish. It gives it like that more greenish tint, but we can actually tap into the intensity slider and amplify the effect, or we can lower it, and then you have nothing. By double-clicking on the intensity slider, it's always going to go back to its default setting. Okay, so now we're actually going to get into the gold toning filter. This toning was actually used for Coloride, which strongly enhances the print premises, as well as giving them a flatter, metallic, bluish, blackish, purplish look, as you can see. And once again, you can rely on your intensity slider to either amplify the look, or you can decrease it to give it more of a subtle look. But by decreasing it, you kind of fall into, it goes right back into a color image. So you want to start off anywhere from 100 and either amplify or give it that default setting look that we're looking for. Okay, so let's also make it stand out by just adding a little punch to it. And just to showcase how that looks, we're actually just going to make it stand out a little bit more by applying a black and white rendered look. And I'm actually just going to go into the Ilford pan. There we go. And let's just showcase what those different type of filters would look like. So there goes your gold. There goes your selenium. Your selenium is pretty much a classic toning used mainly for the purpose of prints. It pretty much provides a light color change, mostly in like the purple range, and you can kind of see that this image kind of has its purple hue to it. And then we have our sepia terra, which is a lighter than classic sepia tone look. Okay. Now let's talk about our sepia gold. Sepia gold. The sepia gold is more lighter than sepia with some colder or blue notes per se. And then you had your all-time classic, which was our sepia, which we're all familiar with. Our sepia is pretty much one of those filters that was developed, if I'm not mistaken, sometime around the 1800s, both to protect better and make the image actually more familiar to older prints. Today sepia has become like one of those main look for like antique photos. This toning is actually darkest of all the sepia choices in the subpalette in Film Pack 4. And once again, this can also be amplified, or you could decrease it. So let's just go back to scratch. Now we're actually going to start talking about our creative blur vignetting. which I would have to admit is probably one of the functionalities of Film Pack 4 that really stood out to me, which I'm a really big fan of. And I'm going to actually show you why I'm such a big fan of it. So let's just get rid of this image, and we're going to find an image. We're going to select this one right here. I'm going to open this right up. And before we start demonstrating the Creative Blur vignetting tool, we're just going to select a look of our choice. So let's get into that Roly 25. So we're just going to drop that out so we can really see that. So the very first thing when wanting to use the Creative Blur vignetting tool is you actually want to set your control point at its sweet spot. But pretty much what the Creative Vignetting lets you do is apply an effect along the image. However, the setting creates more of a less blurred border effects in order to draw attention to a certain pinpoint of the object. So this is more of like using a soft focus lens, or even trying to give it like that lens baby effect that everyone's really been picking up on. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to set my center point right in the middle. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to utilize the intensity slider. Intensity slider is always set at 0 by default in an image. Although the more you move the slider to the right, the more blurry it will appear. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to grab this intensity slider and I'm just going to drag it all the way to the right, giving that nice blur all around the image. My next step is I'm actually going to use the radius, and this slider lets you control the size of a surface area on which you want to apply the blur. The default setting is always going to be at 50, which means that the blur takes up roughly 50% of the image surface, starting from the edges. So moving to the left reduces the surface size, moving to the right extends the surface towards the center of the image. At 100%, I mean, it's just completely blurry. So we're just gonna, I'm actually happy where this is at right now. So I'm actually just gonna leave this at 50. The transition determines the sharpness of the transition between the vignetting and the non-vignetted zone. The more the sliders move to the right, the more of the transition is actually more noticeable. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to grab the transition slider, and I'm probably just going to fine-tune it a bit. I'm going to just bring it to, okay, so I'm happy right there. So I'm leaving the transition about 37%. And then we have the roundness, which determines the shape of the vignetting, but giving us the greater positive values around the form of the image. The greater the negative value, the more rectangular the form appears. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to take the roundness, and I'm just going to boost this up probably to about, let's just leave this at 100%. So the roundness is at 100. Now our diffusion, which is really important, actually defines the effect of the micro contrast and the detail diffusion as you move the right slider to the right. So the diffusion, I'm probably just give you a quick example what happens when it's moved all the way to the right. All the way to the right. And I'm just going to fine tune it till I find a really nice sweet spot that I like myself. And I'm going to leave it about 22%. So my intensity slider is set at 100. My radius is set at 50. My transition is set at 37%. My roundness is set at 100%. And my diffusion is set at 22%. And my anchor point or my control point has been set right in between my main subject's eyes. Now what I can do is I can actually apply the correction so that it sticks. And then you're kind of stuck with something flattering like that. And let's go there. Okay, so let's do that one more time. Set that at 100. We're going to set our radius and leave it at 50. Our transition is set at 38. Our roundness, we're going to leave at 100. And our diffusion, we left it somewhere in the 20s. Drop that down. Set that point right where it needs to be at. And there you go. And you're stuck with something really nice and flattering like this, where our main subject face is right in focus, and then we have that really nice, soft, flattering blur effect. So now we're actually going to start getting into our textures. So let's just close the Creative Blur Vignetting tool and let's just open up the textures. But before we do that, let's bring in our next example. So we're not going to save that because once again, we were just saving that for demonstration purposes. And let's select our next image, open that right up. Let's select our black and white emulated look of choice. And this is another tip. We've actually done some major improvements to the lower palette of Film Pack 4. So you can actually grab your lower palette and extend it and make your thumbnails bigger now, which I thought was extremely accommodating in Film Pack 4. So I was really happy that they made that improvement. And now let's just look for an image of our choice. I'm really happy with how this Kodak high-speed infrared film's looking like. So I'm just going to drop that down, and we're just going to start working with our textures just a bit. The texture palette lets you simulate scratches and tears on films, and pretty much this gave the appearance as if our film strips weren't put into a protective sleeve and they got all those really interesting scratches. So the textures drop-down menu lets you select from a number of predetermined texture effects that we've created in our laboratories. The intensity slider actually lets you amplify the effect, or you can simply decrease it. And then our randomize tool lets you rotate the texture look from anywhere pretty much you want. So let's just start going through the individual texture looks. So there goes our paper grain 2. There goes our creased paper, which I would have to admit is probably one of my favorites. We have our scratches, stain 1, stains 2, our stains 3, and let's just show you that example that I was talking about. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually set on my textures, and I'm on creased paper right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to grab and slide that intensity slider all the way to the right. What I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to start rotating and randomize different textures. And you can see in real time that all those creased looks are just falling in different places. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm just going to randomize until I find the texture being accommodating. And I kind of like how that looks. Now we're actually just going to start talking about our light leak. So we're going to close out our textures, we're going to get rid of this image, and we're actually going to tap into our light leaks right now. So let's select an image, let's open that up, and before we do that, let's select a black and white emulated look of our choice. And What's the good one? I kind of like what this Polaroid 664 looks like, so let's select this one. And we're just going to drop that out, and we're going to get into some of our light leaks. Our light leak tool emulates the problems that occurs along the edges of photos during an aging or accidental exposure leak of the film strip that's actually suffered from a light leak when we used film cameras. So pretty much the best way I could describe it was back in the day, if we shot traditional analog film in our film cameras, and let's just say we accidentally dropped our camera, most likely we would experience a light leak because the back of the camera that actually keeps the camera light tight was suffering from a light leak. And we actually now can create that. So in the drop-down menu, you can actually select from a couple of predetermined effects that we've created. And let's just start looking at those. Once you've selected a light leak of your choice, you're actually just going to notice that your intensity slider and once again your randomize tool shows up. And if there's one thing that I would have to say about the light leaks intend to work really good when they're up on top. For me, I'm not too crazy about showcasing the light leaks on the bottom, but once again, this is more of a personal preference. So we're just going to start going through the different type of light leaks that we have to offer. So there goes our light leak 2. There goes our light leak 3. Our light leak 4. There goes 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now I'm just going to go to one of my personal favorite light leaks, and I would probably have to say it's definitely light leak 7. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to randomize it and put it all the way up on top. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab this intensity slider and amplify it. Let's choose a better one, actually, so you can really see how that light leak works. Let's put it up on top. There we go. There goes your light leaks. Now we're actually just going to talk about the frames a bit more, and let's apply a creative frame to this, which is also a new feature in Film Pack 4. So we're going to tap in to the different type of frames that we have to offer. And you pretty much what the frame tool does, it just applies different frames or different effects to the edges of your image. The frame drop-down menu lets select from different type of frames, and we're just going to go around and just play with the frames right now. Okay, I actually really like how that looks, but I want to showcase all the other frames that we have to offer. You have your darkroom 2, your slide 1, your slide 1 black and white, your slide 2 black and white, and your instant, which I would have to admit is one of my favorites. So what I like to do with the instant, obviously as default, you can see how it's kind of like on the lower hand of the image. So what I like to do is I actually like to randomize it and put it somewhere up along the edges, and then you kind of get stuck with something really nice like this. So here goes an image that we actually applied a traditional analog look, and for that film we actually used our Polaroid 667. We actually used our light leak, white leak 3, and we randomized it so it's up on top. And then we applied a creative frame, which is the instant frame. We also randomized that and rotated it so that you can see it along the edges right up here on your upper left-hand side. So now we're actually just going to start getting into some really important the advanced settings. The advanced settings palette lets you adjust and fine-tune the following, and I actually just want to discuss some of that. So let's get into that. Let's get into our advanced settings, and here goes our advanced settings, which you can locate right next to your effects. And you have your basic settings, which gives you control of your contrast and your exposure. You have your advanced settings, which helps you with micro contrast, and the micro contrast palette lets you adjust and fine-tune for the following. Something that you can only find in the expert edition of the software, and I can't even begin to explain how important the advanced setting palette is because the advanced setting palette lets us create our own unique looks where we can create our own custom preset looks, and we can even share them with other FilmPack 4 users. So let's go there. And then you have your channel mixer, which is extremely important. So to showcase the channel mixer, let's just bring in another image. Let's get rid of that. And what's a good image for the channel mixer? Well, this one right here. So we're going to bring that one right in. Just lower that film strip a little bit so we can see that. And let's look for good accommodating emulated black and white look so we can really showcase that, that channel mixer. Let's go with this one. So let's close that out. Okay, so once again, the channel mixer, I mean, it's a feature that you can only find in FilmPack 4 Expert Edition, and this functionality of the software is really important because this is what gives us all that fine-tuning capability where we can create our own custom looks, and this is really where a lot of the magic happens. The channel mixer actually lets us adjust and fine-tune the black and white conversions according to our own personal preference by acting on additive colors. And those are your primary colors, which is your red, your blue, and your green, and as well as your subtractive colors, which is your cyan, your magenta, and your yellow. If there's a really good tip that I can give everyone today, is you definitely want to tap into your camera and you want to switch over your color space to an Adobe RGB 98 color space. So if you go into your menu settings in your camera, you can clearly see that you're capable of producing an sRGB color space, which is not a color space we want to be shooting in. We spend all this money for these really nice pieces of hardware, so we want to use them to our full benefit. So you definitely want to go into your menu settings and switch over your color space to Adobe 1998 color space so that you can reap the colors of the full gamma. And now we're just going to get into the channel mixer a little bit more, and you can actually evaluate which channels are too bright or too dark utilizing the channel mixer, and then move the applied slider in a desired direction. As far as when moving the slider to the right, you can darken it, or moving it to the left, you can lighten it. And by doing this, it's more of a personal preference when it comes to fine-tuning. So the perfect example that I can give you, let's just say if your image contains some yellow, you can move the yellow slider to the left to darken the image, or you can move it to the right to brighten up those yellows. So let's just put that back to the default setting, and by putting it back to the default setting, all you're going to do is just double click on the slider and they'll revert back to the default setting. So make sure that you're using the tools in the palette controls under the black and white mode, not the color mode, because then it really won't work. And you can also fine-tune your reds where you can darken them or you can lighten them. And we're just going to set that back to scratch. Same thing goes for your green or lighten. Our blues. Let's lighten that up. There goes your blue. And there it goes lightened. We're just going to double click that, put it back at our default setting. And now for magenta, we're going to darken and we're going to lighten. Do that one more time. Darken and lighten. And pretty much to reset the values, let's just say, in your controls, which people really don't intend to notice, you actually have two little features right here. You can actually create a custom preset by selecting the plus sign, or let's just say, for instance, we moved all the sliders, we went crazy and created a nice custom look. That's probably a little too dark, so let's leave that right around there. I'm going to just move that cyan. Okay, let's just say, for instance, we wanted to reset to the default settings. What we can actually do is we can go all the way up on top under your controls palette, and then you can actually hit the reset to the default settings, and then it goes right back into color. Okay, so I'd like to actually now go over a quick overview of what's new in Film Pack 4. So we developed a really nice chart to help explain the following. In the meantime, we're actually going to remain on the line for about an additional 10 or 15 minutes just answering general questions. And we're going to try to give you the best answer that we can possibly give you. So let me pull up that chart that we've created. So there goes the chart. And I actually just want to stop and go over the differences between our Essentials edition and our Expert edition. So we can clearly see that, the Expert edition definitely has a lot more to offer as far as our black and white emulated looks, our color looks, our designer presets, and our color filters. But what I really want to bring to everyone's attention is what you can do in the Expert edition that unfortunately you cannot do in the Essentials edition. And things that you can do in the Expert edition are the following: create custom presets, create snapshots, actually fine-tune your vibrancy and your micro contrast. We actually offer a denoising tool. You have full control of your HSL by individual channels. You can actually fine-tune your channel mixer. You can definitely create creative blur vignetting, and that's something you can only find in the Expert edition. And just that reason, that's one of the highlights of the Expert edition. I mean, you need that creative blur vignetting because it's an extremely strong tool. The textures, the edge defects, and framing are really nice, but it's more of a personal preference. And for something that was really a useful tool, your batch processing, definitely all day, every day. So for those wedding photographers who are shooting really big assignments and they don't want to sit there and create each individual look one at a time, you can create a preset, bring in about 250 images into DxO Film Pack 4, apply that batch process, walk away, grab a coffee, grab a tea, come back, and it's done, which I thought was really accommodating. And I would also have to admit the snapshot feature in DxO Film Pack 4 was an extremely useful tool because now there's no need to write our values and on a piece of scrap paper and just keep up. Now we can create like all these nice little snapshots where we can compare different looks one from another. So on that note, I'd really like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. And until the next time I see one of you, keep on shooting. And keep in mind, you definitely want to pay us a visit at our website for future updates on webinars, or even if you feel like replaying this webinar. And you definitely want to tap into our DxO Academy, where we're always
posting up educational content that's always available and that we're always working on and developing. And you definitely want to take advantage of our special pricing to the end of this month on our website. Or if you're looking for a box set, you definitely want to pay your local reseller a visit where you can actually pick up a box set. And let's just pull up the website real quick so we can showcase what's going on at DXO. And here are some of the specials that we have going on to the end of the month. So you have your DXO Optics Pro, you have the new and improved DXO Film Pack 4, and we have our DXO Viewpoint. So once again, it's your channel sales and educational manager, Hector Martinez, coming at you live today from Paris, Boulogne. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone so much for attending today's webinar. I'm always around. You can catch me shooting in the streets, or you can even find me at a local trade show or event teaching a class or giving a lecture. And if you see me, by all means, stop on by and say hello. And until next time, I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much, and have a good day.